Brett, this is just a quick check-in to see if you can hear me. Brett, this is just a quick check-in to see if you can hear me. Brett, this is just a quick check-in to see if you can hear me. Brett, this is just a quick check-in to see if you can hear me. Weird.
Do we need to mute that?
Who muted last?
I muted.
All right, let's see. Well, I'm still talking. I mean, we're still on. Are we still good? Oh, maybe it's because I did this. If I do that, does that change it? No, we're back. Okay. I think we got it.
Yeah.
All great live streams and technology start with an echo.
Makes it feel like Daft Punk.
True.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. My name is Clark Sell. This is that.online. Today, this is our closing keynote, if you will. It's a panel with, is it 6 or 7? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. There's 8 of us, right? I can't even count. It's a long day. A lot of amazing women. And we're going to have a great open and honest conversation that I'm looking forward to having. People are already filing into the chat. And so without further ado, we're going to get started here. And I got to play a little Brady Bunch. So before we get started, for everybody who's watching at the moment, feel free to drop something in the chat. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. And I recognize that there's a Brady Bunch of us all here talking. So we ourselves are going to try to self-moderate and make that valuable. But what the spirit of today is, how do we, if all of today is about bringing the world into the view that we call that conference, if today is about trying to refactor a conversation and to be authentic to the formats that we have and all the things that have been going on in this crazy world, what I wanted to do was have this conversation with a number of ladies who have impacted me in a certain way, and who come from a very set of diverse backgrounds. And so we're going to go through a really quick introduction before we get into the conversation. I'm quickly going to go through each one and then let them introduce themselves. So, and I'm kind of talking fast because I want to let's get to the meat. So first, Cassie, for me, is a girl who came up to me out of the random of nowhere, who was involved in TC, pulled me to the side and said, I just went up to a guy named Seth. I had a bunch of questions, and it's because of this that I was able to get this new opportunity, which is kind of springboard off to a whole nother thing. And it's because of this thing that we created. And it's important because when I think about what we're trying to do, it's those opportunities that I'm not even involved in that happen as a result of that. So that's Cassie. And I'm going to let every lady introduce themselves. Carolyn, designer, kind of pulled in, really super happy with the things that we're doing, just reaches out, says, how can I help? How can we support you? And then became this, kind of partner in crime of all the things that we've been doing as soundboard, every which way to Sunday. And you just kind of think of that and you think of the broader, and it was even just a few minutes ago, we were exchanging things back and forth. Sarah, have worked together, have for years, has been a sounding board and a mentor about how to pull in more women in different ways. We have lots of good conversations and arguments and kind of everything in the fold, not about women, just on all kinds of things. I'm usually right about technology. She thinks Detroit's great, whatever have you, they're all fun things. But we've worked together now for a number of years and whatnot. Jill, a person who I've confided in work, in kind of management of company, in how to rebalance one's life, in mentoring, another amazing woman who's like trying to make everybody's life one step better every day. Denise, coming from Miami, I think you're still in Miami.
I'm still in Miami.
Keynoted many years ago. The thinking that comes out of Denise and how you kind of change to be creative and how you be yourself and your authentic self, how to, her and I've had a number of chats about, just us running our business and the scariness that comes along with it. You've always been kind of super honest and available for things. And the stuff that you do in the community globally, like is inspiring. Jamie, met last year, keynoted, brought us all to tears. I'm not doing that today. You and I have confided a number of times about our business. You have pitched, you've pivoted around, you run a clothing company. Another business owner in these crazy times of need. You're super active in the community and things like everywhere. I could go on and on. Rachel, there's a lot of people. I gotta take a breath. Rachel Madison, super involved in the community, likes to help mentor others. Really a lot of like self-reflection of how one can be better, how you can be better, inwardly and back outwardly. You've been on the podcast a number of times. Just a lot there to be learned from. And then April, who many people don't know, I had this conversation with April last year when was it? No, it was earlier this year. I hope nobody's getting hit by a train. It'd probably be Detroit. April, into coaching, her and I had probably an hour and a half, 2-hour conversation one day about all kinds of things in the Dome and how do we kind of, work right in crazy times. And the irony of all of that is it happened before the COVIDs and all of this crazy stuff. So I think of the conversation that we had and as vulnerable as that conversation was in all regards. And I think of today and the things I had confided in you I tell you some more things that you'd be like, oh yeah, no shit, I noticed that when we chatted. But all in all, amazing women. And the point of today's conversation is to really have as open as transparent conversation as possible. With that, it took me 8 minutes. So, and we can go as long as it needs to go. Would any of you like to add any more to that? Or would you like to go around the horn and add on to your professional career or personal career matters or home matters?
I'd like to say a little something just about that conference and the role that it's played. How you talked about it's definitely springboarded my career and everything. But when I first went there, I was a junior developer on an all-male dev team. And a lot of the sessions I went to, there was maybe only a few women, or maybe I was the only one. And by the last year, it was it was much more diverse. So I thought that was amazing. And it shows like a testament to the effort that you all have put in. And then also just being able to, I feel like I kind of like grew up as a developer at that conference, from, learning machine learning to being able to be exposed to different things that I necessarily wouldn't have been exposed to in my day-to-day life. And so having access to this conference online now means more people will hopefully be able to start a journey like that with that conference.
You really just dug right into it because there's some, I really want to tailwind off of that, but would anybody else like to say anything?
I actually would love to say something. That conference actually was kind of pivotal for me in my career as well, because it was the very first conference that I was invited to keynote, and kind of being at that conference, right? Like, you look at you, like you're like the first one. And then just by the right of being listed on that conference website as a keynote, then another conference, which actually happened before that conference, but technically they came to me afterwards. Oh, it's Kitty Cameo time.
I think the cat went from your screen actually down
right,
to hers.
and then just got a little darker.
Yeah.
And so then it basically just kind of started off this kind of whole process from me. And incidentally, that year I spoke at that conference, and then I went and spoke at the conference, which is like really funny. People were just like, "Don't they have other names?" I was like, "No." But anyway, and then that led to another speaking at that conference led to another really important engagement that year, and so there was just this wonderful kind of chain of events and causality from it, and it wouldn't have happened in my life, and I don't think maybe I wouldn't be my keynote speaking wouldn't have progressed as quickly if it hadn't been for that conference. And so I appreciate you, Clark, for making an effort and reaching out, and to doing this work that you're doing now and that you've been doing to have a more diverse speaker lineup, to have a more diverse conference attendee makeup, and to make people feel like all kinds of people, to make families feel welcome, make women feel welcome, make people of color feel welcome in a very white male dominated industry. So,
okay, so let's just dive into that.
Do it.
Because Cassie kind of just reached in, and then you just went on there, and I want to go into it. So I'll say something that I probably never said publicly, other than to a few of you. And Michael, I do see the questions in chat. We'll get there in a second. So I feel like so we've worked really hard to get as many women at the event as possible. The easiest, the most visible thing would be speakers, right? How do you get to kind of 50% women speakers? And then you can break that down further. How do you have X percentage of people of color or of different religions or whatever, right? You could start to break that funnel down. And then 125 speakers becomes pretty small pretty quick, right? So if you're going to have 120 and you have 60 women and 60 men, and on top of that, you're going to need, let's say, 150, women submit, so that you can, get the right balance. Because if every woman submitted the same React talk, I'm kind of stuck because we only need one. So I think the thing that I've seen over the past 9 years is that there's this inherent trust that has to be earned. And so I'll admit it, I'm white. I'm the white dude. My backgrounds don't really matter. And I go to whatever group, a women's group, a black coders group or whatever, I'm still the white dude. And so like that piece of trust has to be earned. I'm assuming, because I've seen kind of the ratcheting up of more and more women. This would have been the first year where we could have had a 50-50 split of women to men speaking. Of course, COVID's here, so now we have 90% to one dude. So I've completely flipped the balance on this keynote. So I guess my question to that is that a fallacy that's in my head? Because it's been a 9-year journey I recognize that not every woman is a speaker, no different than every man's not a speaker. There's less women in technology. Part of the reason we have kids speaking is to give exposure to kids who may have not ever known that was a path for them. Part of our role is important as people because they get to see another woman speaking, or a black man speaking, or a black woman speaking, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's somebody else that's in that position that they could then say, that person looks like me, that I can relate to that person. I think that looks interesting to me, right? So the 9 years, it's taken a long time to get there. How do people earn that trust to get more involvement at a time where we need it more than ever.
Well, I can jump in. I think my experience with that conference, and I was, last year was my first year. I was a counselor and attendee. I think the reason I latched on so hard to that conference is I've been in professional roles for over 20 years. I've been to a lot of conferences. That conference was the first conference that really sort of, I left and it was like, I want to be a part of this every year going forward. There's just a different vibe with that conference. And I think you're asking about how do you create that trust? I think what you have built in terms of an environment and a set of values and an ethos around this gathering is a huge part of that. It's sort of leading by example. It's amplifying the voices of people whose voices usually aren't amplified. It's actively promoting the diversification of those voices. So I think what you have going, what that conference has going for it and what you have led is just a huge amount of intentionality about this. It's being very deliberate, and you can tell it's a priority. Like, I, as a woman, I felt it. It was like, okay, I definitely belong here. And
so is there a place where the deliberate becomes read as fake?
Forced, yeah. That's tough. I mean, I think there is.
I'll give you, Denise, it looked like you wanted to say something.
I did, and I wanted to say, but kind of before, not really answering the deliberate versus fake, the intentional versus fake. I actually think that people can tell the difference of performative diversity versus intentional, like kind of good-hearted diversity. What I was going to say was, in answer to your first question, which is how to gain the trust of the communities, I think what she was saying is actually really valid. When you build this environment where people do feel included, they do feel like they have a place, and they do feel like they want to be a part of it, then they basically can become evangelists. And maybe the part that that is maybe missing, or the part that you may want to do, is to just actively tell people, like, hey, we really want to build this community. We want you to bring your people into this community. So, please go and tell, all of the groups, so like tell all the women who are coders that, like, if you really enjoyed the conference, please share this with your friends. If you're in, Black coding, blah, 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 like, please share it with your people. If you feel so moved, like, we would love it if you would bring, your actual ask will, if you don't already. I'm not presuming that, you probably do, but
I actually have it. I felt that I wasn't in a position to ask that. Mm-hmm. To be quite honest,
I honestly, I don't think there's anything like, just say like,
to being asked, right? I don't want to be the token woman all the time. It just gets a little bit tiring. So then we maybe get a little bit sensitive to those type of asks, and trust and stuff. That's just a slow moving thing. That's, I think, just happens over time. I also want to mention, what was it? Oh, I lost it. Keep going. It might come back, but
it'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Come back.
I will say too, just that, like, in general, when you go to a conference and you have a good experience, you're likely to go tell other people in your community. You don't necessarily, I feel like you could do the ask, and I think it is cool to do that, but I think organically that kind of happens. And I think that's kind of why I've seen the change that I've seen over the years at that conference, because it gets that reputation of, like, this is a good, inclusive, accepting place. And it makes people want to go, and it makes people want to tell their friends to go. And I've heard about other conferences that I don't want to name, but that were not inclusive. And it's like, hey, you might not want to go there because they have some bad culture. So like, it kind of like gets around, I feel like, when it is authentic and real versus when it isn't, to just kind of validate what some other people were saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I remember now.
Yay!
The thing that I think is always interesting going to different tech conferences that stood out initially with that for me was I would go to other conferences and they would talk a lot about diversity, but then I got a men's t-shirt. So the fact that I got to pick a women's size t-shirt when I first registered was kind of a big deal for me. And that was initially like points, and I hadn't even got to the Dells yet.
Oh, Cotton. So I think, Sarah, your microphone switched.
Oh.
I think so.
Can I add something,
Yeah,
Clark,
please.
real quick? One thing I've seen that you seem to do really intentionally that works and differentiates that, as a non-techie person who's been around for like 5 years now, is the mentoring. And mentoring works when you think about bringing minorities and people of color into a community and creating that sort of longevity. I think that you are very intentional about mentoring people and helping people, submit abstracts and, inviting people to be a part of the speaker community, as well as many of the other ways in which you bring people together. And so, that's a huge value. And whether it was by design or something that you just felt compelled to do, I think it makes a huge difference.
So I'll go to you, April, because you've been quiet down in a corner, and I know that you and I had this 2-hour conversation. And I don't remember if your role is officially a psychiatrist or a doctor, and you deal with the dome. I'm just going to put it that way.
Yeah, not quite a doctor. I actually have taken probably 100 courses just so I wouldn't go back for my PhD. But I am a licensed professional counselor, an intuitive coach, and I work with businesses and small businesses and entrepreneurs alike. They're my favorite people as entrepreneurs. But I went to that conference not really knowing what to expect. And I have to say everything that everyone has already said, that I walked in with no background and felt immediately welcomed and felt immediately like, I could do a little session here. I could, talk to people, get to know people, not being in the tech world. I wasn't expecting to participate in the conference at all. And I completely participated as much as I could and really enjoyed myself. And then preparing for this year and really wanting to talk, I shared it with a lot of people. I think that's the key. Like, when there's not that genuine trust of a conference, it's very clear in how people talk about the conference and how people share or don't share about it. Whereas what I've seen of conference attendees of that conference is that not only do they want to share and get people there, they want to be a part, they want to do things. And I felt the same way, not even being close to tech, which was completely surprising for me. So,
and to be clear, I don't want to make this conversation about that in
Sure.
general. I know we're talking about
Sure.
communities and whatnot, but we all live in the work. We all live in the workplace every day. Like, so what are some of those attributes that make it safe? We talked about one is just kind of this open conversation, but I am much more vulnerable. I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, but I'm much more transparent, open about who I am and the things that kind of live around me. And I know a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable with that. I think of the conversation, Jamie, you and I had in that room that day. Practically were in tears about, the businesses are running, and then this COVID shit happens. And I'm like, you okay? Shit's hard. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know that everybody rolls like that. So when you think of what are the flags? I guess what are the things, the microchasms that end up happening that kind of roll into a bad place? or an uninviting safe place. Rachel.
It's like you knew. It's like you knew I was going to raise my hand. I think I hear a lot. I don't personally buy into the myth of the pipeline problem. I hear that a lot.
Can you define what that means?
Yeah, so like I help put together, a conference before and looking for speakers and looking for people to attend. It's like, oh, well, we can't find, this amount of women or this amount of people of color because it's a pipeline problem. Or we can't find good engineers because it's a pipeline problem. Nope. And that is a myth. That is not real. There's no pipeline problem. It's a you problem. It's about being intentional, like Carolyn was saying earlier, about making sure that you're looking at your networks that you're talking to. If you're just going to post your job in one network, well, that's not giving other people access to it. It's not putting it in front of people who could actually do a really good job at it, but you're not even thinking about them because you don't have that perspective. And so employing people who know, these connections and going to meetups and just thinking about things in a different way. I can tell you that every time we've intentionally tried to have a certain number of people to at least put out an application or put out a CFP to, that we've always found them when we were intentional about it.
I actually want to add on to that, if I may. I apologize for talking so much, but I got opinions and stuff, so
that's
hope y'all can roll with that. So Sarah, to what you're saying, a pipeline problem, one of the things you said is networks, and I always feel like I'm just as soon as they say, well, we couldn't find anybody, I'm like, what is your network doing? Because basically every time I go to a conference, I end up meeting all of the women and all of the people of color. And it just is just one of those things. Sometimes I seek people out, sometimes I don't. Plus, a large number of white dudes or whatever else. But I end up, so then afterwards, it's just what do you mean you couldn't find a female speaker? What do you mean you couldn't find a woman of color speaker? I know this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and I can literally give a list of 20 people off the top of my head. And they're like, we didn't know. I was like, you haven't been paying attention, and you haven't been making an effort to connect with these people. They all exist, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I always feel like it's the lamest thing. I was like, I can name 20 white guys off the top of my head, and I can name to you at least 20 women, and probably half of them being women of color. Where have you been?
I think that's so much of it, though, is often the places that I've found to be less comfortable. It's a cultural thing that comes with the organizers often. So Clark, with you and my experience with that, it was immediately comfortable from the moment we had our first phone call to see if I might be a fit for the keynote. I think Aaron Douglas referred me over, and it was just one of those things. Immediately there was an openness and the feeling of family, and I think that starts with the organizers often. And where on the contrasting side, there's in places I felt less comfortable, it's often a laziness. They've done this 1,000 times. They don't expand beyond what they've done before. They don't start asking questions and evaluating, just like you would with your company. You look at what's working and what's not working and how you want to grow and who you want to be, not just right now, but tomorrow, and continually growing toward that. I know that, with everything that has been happening in the world in the past few months, it has really pushed me to self-examine and ask different questions and really look at how I can grow better. And that awareness has been amazing. And I feel like I'm in the baby infancy stages of starting to expand my brain and, things that I just didn't even realize I was weak at. And I think conferences and events, it's the same thing. We have to sort of internalize a little bit and in order to grow and expand and ask, reach out.
Yeah. And I'll be the first to admit, we have done a horrible job of getting more people of color or Latino, Black, Chinese people involved. and in some regards have been more focused on trying to get the gender balance, that I didn't see the fact that other things weren't happening that could have been happening. And, it's easy to get wrapped up in like, are we going to be able to, get the sponsorship and make the money and kind of the daily grind, and then you forget or don't get time. It's hard with 2 jobs, so that's a different feast in itself. But again, it's our civic. If we're talking about no different than a manager's job at their company, my role in what we're doing in this platform is to set the example, and it's my responsibility to make sure that it is balanced, and it falls on me if it's not. And I certainly take that piece of accountability.
I want to add to, can I add to what Jamie said?
Yeah.
I thought it was a great point that I think this year has been to self-reflect a lot for me internally in areas of my life where where do I not see a lot of color? Like, what am I consuming where I don't see a lot of variety? So it's forced me to mix up Twitter, Instagram, like all of those things that I'm reading every day, the news, so that I'm getting a wider array. But I think a lot of us, my opinion, I think it's uncomfortable to admit that we, don't see those things, or it's a little painful to say that, we are stuck a little bit. So it's harder to move. But that's always one thing I think too, is just broaden what you're looking at.
So I'll ask the generic question. Are we doing better, or is it still a shit show?
Yes and
yes. I'll say, like, my backgrounds don't matter by any stretch, but I try to make lemonade out of the lemons that are left, and there doesn't seem to be many lemons left this year. COVID happened. I think as a small business owner, I'm sure, Denise, you felt like this. April, I'm sure you were impacted. Jamie, I know you've had to refactor. Jill, I'm sure, you're in the same boat too. It was the first time, I think for me, where the being stripped of something without any
recourse.
Yeah, just like a choice, right? Like my sense of empathy, this sense of overwhelmness kind of overtook for a number of weeks, and depression is to now thinking about how others have had things stripped. And this isn't just about the US. Globally, we've got like major issues. So, to have something kind of ripped away with zero choice or warning or whatever, and then we have to pivot, we got to take the next step, and we got to keep on going. And then we get into the racism that continues to happen in the US and abroad. And I look at the opportunities, I look at that and go, and this is like, this is a kick in the ass. Is it the right kick in the ass? And are we doing the right things that can start to make change, like everlasting change? Like it's great to protest, but if it stops and the rest of it doesn't continue to happen, then it didn't go any further, right? It's great to have a conversation, but if we don't come out of this with like actionable things that people can walk away with, then it was an hour for nothing, right? And so I guess given the kick in the ass that's been happening, great. I feel like we kind of needed it in some regard, but are we at a place where we can have more difficult conversations? Are we at a place where we're more accepting of the hard conversations? Are we collectively like, is there hope? I want to see us end like 2020 and know that shit at least moved forward better than it has in the past. And have at it, Denise.
No. That was my
I was
silent clapping. Like, yes, preach it, Clark. Because I would love for 2020 to end like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as developers, we know sometimes we have to break things before we can fix them. So maybe we should just call
That's
like
a good way to put
2020
it.
the Great Refactor. Like,
The great refractor. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I don't know the exact article, but my mother was sharing that she had read an article about how historically the greatest innovations and the greatest positive changes have come out of times of intense disruption and upheaval. And so we're kind of in one of those places. We're in one of those places where sort of we are, yeah.
Yeah, kind of very much.
News alert.
Exactly.
The rules are, you know, kind of they're not the rules anymore. The game has changed, and so, you know, Clark, I don't know the answer, but I think the ground is fertile and ready for some big changes to happen. So, and it feels like that, you know, the intentionality that you have brought to that already has a place in like thinking big. Okay, everything is a shit show. So we've got a clean slate. What do we do now? So I don't know the answer of what to do, but I think we're in a good spot to do some big things.
It feels like an inflection point. I mean, for sure. And I know that I've gotten my fair share of why aren't you using your platform to do a thing? And it's like, oh, I am. You just need to wait a second. Rachel, then April.
Yeah, I think this is more of a general note and not just for that. But I think in order to make real change, in order to, you know, come out on the other side, like right now, nowadays, 2020, in the past several years, we are so used to instant gratification. I want to learn something, I'm going to go online, I'm going to find an article, I'm going to learn about it. If I want to do something with a new platform or whatever, I'm going to figure it out and do it. I think 2020 is the year where we have to pause. We have to lean into the discomfort of what this year is coming from, whether it's hearing about something maybe for the first time, you lived under a rock and you didn't know racism existed, or like you know, this is all new for you and you're listening to new people now. And I think you need to like sit with it and sit with that discomfort in order to come out on the other side and feel like we can move past this. And so if anything, 2020 is teaching us to stop and listen and hopefully come out as better people on the other side of it. And it's not going to be fixed with the latest React framework. It's going to be us questioning the systems that are in place and why they're in place, and how can we fix these systems so that it's not just benefiting one certain type of person going forward.
April?
Yeah, I just was thinking about all of the clients and groups and communities I'm in throughout this whole process of COVID and the racial unrest, and just thinking about everybody at first was craving community or was craving this connection, and it feels like it turned into layers of that, like finding this place of needing conscious community, and how a lot of times we're in community but it's not conscious, it's not intentional, it's not authentic, and that is what's lacking in a lot of communities, is not going deep and allowing the consciousness and awareness of what's going on in the world, in our world, the world closest to us and the world outside of us. And so then we stay in these places of going deeper into anxiety or depression, or staying apart from everyone, or just being angry, whether it's angry at people or angry at the system or angry within ourselves. And so I'm just thinking about all of, as everyone's talking, all of the conversations I've had since mid-March, and specifically in the last couple of months, that it's given people an opportunity to have conscious community that they didn't realize they didn't maybe have, or how much they actually want and need that. And conscious as in aware of the world around us, aware of ourselves in our communities, and the way we have that is by asking questions and then listening. And that's what I feel like that conference does really well. Well, that's what I feel like Clark does really well from what I know of you, is you ask questions and then you listen. So you exhibit that for the people in your community, which creates an intentional community that's aware.
I wanted to, I'd like to tack on to that, and also what Rachel said, that the next step after that is to act, right? Like, it's not just enough, I think, to join a book club, to follow other people on Twitter, to see diverse voices. The issue, I mean, when you want to talk about the Black Lives Matter and the anti-racism and, you know, anti-white supremacy and all of that stuff, and then I would even tack onto that sexism, like with the whole thing with what happened with AOC last week or the week before that with the sexist comment that the senator did. We can't just sit and like read and think about it, and people have to act. People have to actually make different decisions. They have to respond differently. There has to be some change in behavior. And Clark, you were saying that, like, people are like, why aren't you making like a statement? And you're like, oh, just wait. I'm going to do a thing. And I think more people need to know that it's not just about like the intentional community, then engaging that intentional community, actually challenging, actually saying, okay, this is great, we're talking about it, but like, what are you going to do next? Like, what's the next thing? What's the action you're going to take? How are you actually going to dismantle these systems? And how are you going to actually be a proponent and an initiator of change in your own world that spreads on beyond you?
And for the long term.
Exactly. Not just because it's the flavor of the month, right?
Exactly.
Just because you're like all caught up in the fervor, and then, 2 months down the line, you're going to be worried about something else and you're not going to care.
Yeah.
So there was a question earlier that came in about, if you essentially were a hiring manager and you're trying to build a diverse team, kind of what steps are you going to take? So Jill, I'm looking square at you.
All right, Jill.
Because you do a lot of executive coaching, and building off of Denise's comment about, if we're going to unmantle and take action, what does, or how does, like, that level, how do they start? How I don't want to say kind of dismantle, but how does that change happen there for those who are in power, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think for most organizational change, there has to be a ton of buy-in at the top, or it flames out, right? We've all probably seen and experienced that. It's getting senior leaders and those who shape the culture in the organization to want to be uncomfortable, to recognize that they have been comfortable, whether or not it's from their own decision-making process or just the systems that have been in place. They have been comfortable for a long time, and nothing's going to change until they embrace being uncomfortable and not knowing, and being very willing to want to be champions for change. And there just aren't a lot of people who sign up for that willingly. It's hard. It's the hardest thing to do.
I was going to say, so how do you sign up to do that in such a way that doesn't, like, if you're the person who you feel like you're on the bottom, how do you do that in such a way that is effective and just effective?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of things people can do, right? Find people who are like-minded, right? You can sort of build a groundswell with, peers and colleagues, and grow things organically, and get the ear and the attention of people who really can drive change, and put the importance and the priority behind it, put the resources behind it if they really want to see systemic change. I'm talking about like within an organization, but that is true in a community as well. So I do think there are lots of things that, anyone can do, but we can start with ourselves, of course, but we're going to make more drastic change when we start to increase our numbers and our community, and people will be willing to listen to us go forward.
How do we give feedback? There's a lot of microchasms. I did one earlier. I accidentally said guys. It's something I've consciously tried to not do for the past 10 years, but yet shit, it still happens. Shit, I just completely lost the train of thought.
You asked about giving feedback. How do you give feedback?
Yeah. How do you do that in such a way where, I don't know, you know that somebody has the right intention, but doesn't recognize if said slightly different, or I don't know.
Their blind spots. They don't recognize their blind spots.
Yeah. I mean, is there a way to do that in a safe way that doesn't create distress for somebody?
Well,
I'm going to go based upon how many hands went up. No, you feel like you can't.
There is a way.
I know of a way to do it. It's a long game, but there was a book, maybe some of you have read it, Radical Candor by Scott. Anybody read that? So I read that book not realizing that it was sort of oh my gosh, yes, that's sort of how I've operated without knowing what I was doing. But basically the idea there is that the whole kind of tagline for Radical Candor is you care personally and challenge directly, where you have built up a relationship with people such that you have a level of personal and professional capital with them where when there are hard conversations to have, they can be had safely because the person on the other end of it knows that you're not coming at me with this hard thing because you're attacking me or because I need to be defensive. Like I know that you care about me and you've shown me that you care about me as a person, and so I'm going to absorb what you say. But that's a long game thing. That's not something you can just sort of switch on. That's something you have to make an investment in the people that you're working with and engaging with. But that's something that has been sort of an intentional thing for me, is making sure that the people that I'm engaging with understand that I care about them as people, so that when there are hard conversations, there's that level of trust there already.
Jamie?
Oh, no,
I think you were going to say something.
So she covered it very well. I was just going to simply say, like, there's always a way, and sometimes it depends on the circumstance, like the context of the situation, can kind of unfold a different variety of ways to approach things. I don't know. I've always, I'm very terse with a smile. It tends to work for me, but not always, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I don't know, moving things forward. It's hard. And I think going back to the discomfort thing, maybe, something to consider too, just the flip side of it is receiving feedback, right? Like, maybe that's something to consider too, is like, how do you receive feedback? Are you open to it, or do you shut down, or do you get defensive? So, there's giving feedback and there's also receiving feedback, and it's
a two-way street.
Things to think about.
I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say
Nope, Cassie and Denise.
Okay. Go ahead. I wanted to say how I handle it with people I don't know, and particularly like at tech conferences too. When you're speaking, you end up traversing some of these issues, and a lot of times I kind of do the ask questions first, because if you directly call out, sometimes people get defensive, right? But like, if you start asking questions about trying to understand what they meant, or because sometimes it can be you just don't misunderstood too, and maybe it goes both ways, right? So I try not to jump in and think that they're automatically trying to be harmful or hurtful, even if what they said was. And then I ask a lot of questions until I get down to like the root fundamental of what they were thinking. And then when I get to that, if it's something that is wrong, which it is sometimes, then I start, then I will directly call out. But because I engaged them in a way where I wasn't immediately defensive or accusatory, I've started to build that kind of like that capital, but in like a short amount of time, in a way where I've had it's worked, sometimes doesn't always work, but I've had some good results from that way for dealing with, you know, a stranger, someone you don't necessarily have that personal capital with.
Yeah. I was going to say that a lot of times it's really important, I think, to stick to facts and to stick to behavior rather than focusing on what it means about them as a person or some kind of character flaw or something like that. But you can just be like, when you said this, this happened, right? You know, when you did this thing, this happened. And to have it be very, like I said, kind of more based in fact, and more about like, and then also, I think one of the things that happens, and sure we've all had this in jobs when we were getting like employee reviews and feedback and stuff, where they just kind of rattled off a whole list of things that you did wrong, but didn't give any kind of suggestion of what you could do right. So also to say, you know, you did this, maybe you could consider doing this instead, right? Or, you know, here are a couple of different options of how to deal with this in the future, or to do something different, to act differently. And so that could be also a way that you can give feedback. And then when receiving feedback, to really kind of, again, like focus on the facts and to ask clarifying questions, kind of like the same way, Cassie, that you were saying, like asking those clarifying questions to find out what the motivation and the intention was behind it, but to ask clarifying questions so that you can actually find out what it is that you can do better.
You know, if I can, was there anybody else queued up to answer? Sorry, kind of touching on the giving feedback side of it again, there's just something that I used to always try to teach in my coaching stuff, training stuff, was to separate you from the action. And what you were talking about, Denise, reminded me of that. Like, oh yeah, like try to separate you. Like when you did this, this is what happened, but rather like separate the person from the action. So if you're able to say, when this happened, you know, if this was the outcome, and then you can follow up with questions, but try to remove the action from the person and, you know, separate those so it feels, it's a little more disarming to approach it that way.
Less personalized. Yeah.
Right. So they don't, because often when you say you, like people immediately go on the defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think a lot like it's called code review and like feedback, which probably sounds silly, but maybe it would speak to our audience, but we all are probably involved with code review, and sometimes the feedback hurts, and sometimes I just apply the same rule slip. I've been to some great sessions at a lot of conferences, TC included, where there have been great speakers on feedback of code review that have given me tips that I've applied throughout life.
I have this opportunity with all of you, and I'm not going to let it go regardless of what's ahead. I want to pivot the conversation a bit and talk about families for a second. But TC is a big deal. Kids are a big deal for me. I know a number of you have kids. We're now in this really weird working situation where we're working at home. We're trying to raise our children. Our children are having to work from home. If they're e-learning, God knows what state is doing what anymore, or what city's doing what. I know all of you don't have kids, but for those that do, I know Sarah has like 15. I'm picking on Sarah for.
I got like a whole basketball team happened up in here.
Right. No, like historically, I mean, every family is a little bit different. My wife and I operate. I would like to think I'm pretty involved as a father, but not everybody is. Women bear the brunt of the mommy side of the relationship with kids and the homeworks and whatnot. And now we have this dynamic. How has that the last 6 months been in this world we have at the moment? Like, are employers accepting of it? Are we seeing a place where it's more socially acceptable that there's a family? And I say that from a place of, when I started TC and I said their kids are going to come, I got a whole lot of, like hell, we're going to be there. We ain't sponsoring. What kind of joke is this? And it's taken a decade for people to realize, oh, no. Actually, family's a good thing. Like, we get to see the holistic person. So we've had the remote working, right? Terrible. We can't be efficient at home. Oh, look, we're just as efficient at home as we were elsewhere. Just need an internet connection. I don't know if that's, globally true or not, but do you see employers embracing it more? Do you see the family side going, hey, look, I know, like, it's 2:00. You need to go play teacher at the moment. Although right now kids are not in school.
I have a lot of feels on this. I don't want to take over everything, but I'll put the employers aside. Maybe someone else can touch on that. But the part that I've loved the most is that when I've been remote and my kids have come in and out or asked me questions, I've always been like, I'm on a call, like, this looks bad, oh my gosh. And now it happens to everybody. And I just feel like it's very level set of, oh, like, now you all know what I got going on over here. And we're all on the same page. We're all just trying to get through it. So I feel like there's been a lot of understanding, as well as me not feeling, it's probably that self-imposed, I'm not doing a good job because I'm letting my kids run around my office in color or something. So, but I'll let someone else go as well.
I see two trends, workplace trends. I'm self-employed, so I can't speak to what people are personally experiencing, and I hope other people will speak up. But I see two trends, one that I am happy to see, and I hope it continues to evolve, and that is the just increased flexibility. Organizations that were very resistant to have people working remotely they were forced to kind of give this a try, and some are pleasantly surprised with what they're experiencing. And maybe the pendulum won't swing all the way back, but it'll get somewhere in the middle, and that means that's good news for working mothers who, in many situations, carry the brunt of the load, right? So I think that that's really positive. Yet, and at the same time, I've also seen some pretty alarming data that this situation right now is really setting women back in ways that are kind of undoing a lot of the progress that we've made and kind of getting that kind of, getting toe to toe in the workplace and increasing our female pipelines for leadership and things like that. So there's some good news and bad news, I think, in that. And I'm not sure when we fast forward a few years and can look back, what will have happened.
So when you say stepping back, like what in particular? Like what's the alarming?
Like how it's harming women?
You said harming. I thought you said alarming.
I may have said alarming. It's alarming to me, but I think it's harming women. I think it's harming professional women and women in their careers.
Right. What's the thing what's the alarming fact that is setting women back?
I think because of kids being home and not being in school, or a variety of things that have happened to a lot of us, right? Daycare is closed, before and after school programs, schools are closed. More often, women will pick up the slack for taking care of what the kids need during their workday. And that is now undoing the progress that we've made in women's careers. Because now they are taking a step back. They're reducing their schedules. They might be reducing their time. And then we've lost some of that ground that we've gained. Does that help?
Yeah. I was trying to get to what's the factual, where did you feel that was kind of getting pulled back? And it's, go ahead.
I would say I think that too, along with the fact, so what Jill's saying, I feel that pressure. So if I'm a woman that's comfortable with my life right now and I can manage a schedule with my job and my current responsibilities, I won't apply for that promotion, for that leadership thing, because I don't know how long I'm going to homeschool or something like that. So I can see that side of it as well.
I think that at like the corporate level too, when you work for a big company, there has been a lot of stuff where there've been like, at least from Microsoft, like a lot of verbiage around like, take what time you need and work with your manager and make sure that you prioritize, your life and making sure that, everything is working well. And so I think, but I also realized that I'm in a very privileged and working at a situation, working at a company that's like that, and not everybody is going to experience that. So just trying to manage everything. So I've read a lot of people's point of views where they're like, well, I wake up and I have to homeschool, and feed, and then you have to try to get all your work done. And then after that, you have to try to get everything else done. And so you end up with a really, really full day. And by the end, you're just like tired. So I think that there's a lot of layers to it. And even with having that support, there's some days where I'm like, I am exhausted, after doing everything, even though I know I have that opportunity to talk to, people at my work and say, hey, I need help, or I need to take, and I could do that. But sometimes it's hard to do that too. Just like you're saying, like not taking that next promotion because you're trying to manage everything, but you also like want to, at least I personally really want to do all of the things. So I think as women, we do that a lot. We take on everything and we're like, I got it, it's fine. And so that's what a lot of us are doing during this time.
And I commend Microsoft, I think that's the right word, Microsoft and Google, for saying like, don't, if the big ones aren't saying like, you don't have to go back, you've got kids to take care of, here's the space, then we end up in a position where everybody was idolizing jobs and you had to be an asshole manager to kind of make things forward. And I think we're at a time right now where the big guns have to set some example, because there's a lot of other companies out there who, take their direct example and try to replicate it, whether it be right or wrong. So,
yeah, I'll just add to that. So I think, I work for a company that's been extremely supportive about maintaining balance and taking the time you need and all that. I feel like there's a point at which the place you work and the culture you're in can only do so much. There's a level of self-advocacy that has to happen for us as women, where we have to say, this is too much. I deserve more help. I'm going to ask for more help. I'm not going to take on everything. And that's something that each of us as individuals has to grapple with. And I think we have to unlearn what we have learned in some cases, sort of these modes of operating that we're starting to transition off of them. But I know for me, there's still sort of a lot of shoulds that are ingrained that I have to sort of examine and fight against every day and be like, well, no, I don't have to take all this on. I have a partner. I have other resources. So a good chunk of this is highly individual, I think, and it's hard work, but it's worth doing because our wells need to get refilled, and we are not limitless resources.
So I think to summarize what you just said is everybody has permission to ask for help and to not try to bear the whole load.
Absolutely.
Okay, we are at the end of the hour, and I want to be respectful of people's time because Denise is down in Miami, and the parties start soon in Miami. That is a crazy town.
The party on my couch
anymore.
watching Umbrella Academy is the party that I'm going to.
There you go. So I want to just do kind of a once around, give each of you an opportunity to kind of give like one last kind of piece of value to everybody out there, one thing to say. How can they find you? You all are listed on our that.us page, so people can find you from there. But I'll start with you, Cassie. Any last parting comments, thoughts? Where can everybody wants to know where to buy that shirt? Just Google it. But any last parting thoughts?
That's a good question. I think that one thing is that I've seen online a lot that makes me feel better is like, it's okay to not be okay, that like there is a lot going on in the world right now, and to just like have the compassion and empathy for yourself and the people around you, to make sure that we, do come out better on the other side of this. And the other thing that I think about is we talked about like the pain of change and all of that, but like real fundamental change comes from pain. Like when people are comfortable, they don't change. So my hope is that something good comes from all of the pain and hardship that we experienced in 2020 with, COVID and all the movements, Black Lives Matters shirt, all the proceeds for the shirt go to charity, by the way. So it's like a cute shirt and you're helping charity if you buy it. So I don't know. I guess that's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Carolyn.
Let's see. So, parting words. I think I would say that we are in a really unique time of opportunity that I would say turn in to the uncomfortable embrace the suck, stare straight at the dragon in the corner, and be curious and brave and willing to do things differently, because this is a crazy, scary time, but there's a huge amount of opportunity here if we look for it and recognize it and act on it. So have courage. There will be people to help catch you if you fall. Don't be afraid to try stuff and just charge at it.
Sarah?
This is all great stuff. I'm not even sure if I can add all to this, but I guess relating to women in tech, easy piece of advice I'll just start there for everyone that I say is lend credibility, right? Cassie had a good idea, or Jill just said something I want to get back to. This is the easy takeaway for everybody to do with their everydays is always helpful. As a matter of like all this mess that we're in, I always say just been through periods of very deep grief, and this feels like a grieving period. So just what's already been said, I want to feel it deeply and I want to sink into it. I want to feel the suck because I know that good things will come from that. So expand your horizons and feel all of it. And I think we're going to come out on the better side when this is all done.
Jill? By the way, April's like, she's had all this time to think about it. So as we get down to her, she's like, boom, I got it. Jill?
I would just say this is an incredible time to be introspective, as everyone's talking about feeling all the feels and whatever it is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad time to make a change, either personally or professionally or anything like that. In fact, it can be a really good time to make a change. So if there's something that's been not working for you, I would say look at this as an opportunity to think about what you would change and how you can go about doing it. And there's so many people in this community who are there on a daily basis who are willing to help. So that's my thought.
Denise?
No, that is actually kind of a perfect segue to one of the things that I wanted to say, which is, time to look inward and all of this stuff. One of the things that I was actually talking with a coaching client on Friday, and she was talking about how she was concerned that she wasn't doing a good job at her job because she believed that her job was supposed to be a certain way and it was different than how she was. And what I want kind of people to walk away with is that there's nothing wrong with you. And if you're feeling all the feelings, or if you're feeling that something isn't a good fit, or if you're feeling like you're called to something else or to something more, to respect that and to honor that, and to start to use this time for introspection to really explore really who you are, how you are, and how you're going to, moving forward, how you're going to respect all of those things and then show up more powerfully and contribute more powerfully to the world by being exactly who you are and how you are and what you're good at and brilliant at.
Jamie?
Holy cow, everybody's said such amazing things. I think if one of my personal philosophies I'm just going to throw out there, if it's scary, do it anyway. Do things that are hard and do things that are scary, even when it's really, really hard. Push through it. And I don't know, I think that's how change happens, and just kind of tie a bow on what folks have already said.
Rachel?
So I think with a lot of us, it's, out of sight, out of mind. If I'm not experiencing a problem, it doesn't exist for some people. So I think it's why, I've been coming to that conference since 2016, and I've noticed talks on privilege, talks on diversity, talks on accessibility, not as well attended as the sexiest new framework or anything like that. And I think my challenge would be to, seek out those talks that you may think don't affect you, or those topics that you think don't affect you. They really do. And you just don't realize it because you haven't been exposed to it yet. But there are people who experience that every single day. So I think, take a break from the same and try something new out, and you may find that it's something that's really interesting and something that does affect the greater cause. So that's a challenge.
Love it. April? If this, I mean, you've had like a good 10 minutes. So.
There's no way to have anything new at this point. So I feel like this is such an incredible time to take our power back. In many ways, we are so powerless in the way we live our lives, and I'm saying this we collectively. But the way I look at things is when we are self-compassionate, we are mindful, we are able to take a step back and really listen and really open ourselves up to a deeper layer of being willing to be wrong and not take it personal, but also be willing to dive into the hard stuff, then amazing power comes out of that, inner strength and inner power that we can really affect our lives in the world around us.
I love it. So I'm going to close with this. I'm extremely grateful to each one of you for agreeing to do this and having this conversation and continuing to be, a small part. I talk to some more than I talk to others. And it's not for anything other than being busy. I wish we could get a drink every weekend, but I think what you do and how you do it and the lives that you live because of it is something to be just applauded. And thank you for taking the chance on me and that and putting yourself out there with it. And for all the other ladies who have given me feedback, and as simple as it sounds to you at times, is things that for me at times I just didn't even know, right? And I've always been open and accepting to it. I think it was Denise, you said it, I'll kind of end this with the ask, right? Today, we did launch that.us, and the point of it was to be more inclusive globally at a time where we can't go to a conference, where we don't need to wait. And so for the women and for the Black people and the Latinos and the Asians and whatever category or name, like there's no boundaries to what we can do. And I'm excited about the fact that we can play in this like global space where we could start to pull in other cultures at any point in time and get this perspective, because we do work, at least in some part we all do work in an industry where that's so readily accessible, yet we don't always take the best advantage of it. And it's mind-blowing to me that we don't. So with that, thank you all for participating today. All of these ladies are out there in some way to go connect with. So, please go say thank you to them. Let them know how much that meant. Go tell your friends to be part of that.us. Clearly get a cat, because without that, you cannot live stream on the internet. So with that, I thank you all. I applaud you all for being here. And unless there's any parting words, I hit the finish button. So do you want to say?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.